Your book, The Return to Love, as I've shared with you, is I consider one of the great spiritual classics.
Well,
So
that makes me very happy. Thank you. And of course, I have known Ken Wilber for years. And, um, I think there's one truth spoken in many different ways. And so I think all of the great religious spiritual traditions, plus such things as the integral work of Ken Wilber, all mesh, dovetail.
yeah.
Like you know truth when you read it, when you see it, once you're into those kinds of conversations.
When I see what you're doing in the political arena, it's really something extraordinary and something that's deeply transformative. Because I think what you're actually doing is, in a way that is much more explicit than we are accustomed to seeing, you are basically trying to integrate spirituality on the one hand and politics on the other. I mean, it feels like in a certain way you are holding politics, or really civic engagement itself, almost as a spiritual practice.
There is a template that I think is the greatest spiritual and political interface ever put into one document, and it's called the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That is as much a spiritual perspective as it is a political one. That God gave all men inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which we would say God gave all men the right to self-actualize. Those are two spiritual concepts. Then you add to that the political, which is that the government is instituted to secure those rights, which is a radically different conception of government than had ever been posited on the earth. And then it goes even further radicalism, that it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish that government if it's not doing its job. Now, in a national life as well as in an individual life, everything emanates from your first principles. What do you believe in? What do you stand on? And where do you not align your behavior with your principles? So to me, the Declaration of Independence is our national calling. It's our blueprint. It's our North Star. When we follow it, this country does okay. When we deviate from it, we falter, and we're faltering it now.
It's really interesting, Marianne, that you align very much with, I think, probably our most spiritual president, Abraham Lincoln, in his kind of foundational focus on the Declaration of Independence. When the Gettysburg Address, right, 7 years, he's talking about the Declaration of Independence. He's not talking about the Constitution. And, that's maybe the greatest speech that it's ever been given. And so your core values, it's just beautifully said. And it's so eloquent and it's complex, but it's simple. And that's what makes it so powerful.
I read a book last year, Mark, called There Was Light about Lincoln. And in that book, it goes in some depth into what you were just saying. To him, the entire basis of abolition, the entire basis of the Civil War. People talk about how he did it to save the Union. Definitely that's in there. But by the time of his second election, which he expected to lose, and the reason he expected to lose it was because, as we know, people had thought that that war was going to last 6 weeks. As it turns out, it lasted 4 years, and between 600,000 and 700,000 people died. Now, people in the North particularly had it. They said, why are our sons being sent to die because a bunch of southern states have slaves? So the person who was running against Lincoln in his second race was voicing what millions of people were saying, which is, tell the southern states you can come home. You can keep your slaves. You can keep your slaves, just come back to the Union. And he expected to lose, and people were saying to him, you've got to just let them have their slaves. You've got to just let them have their slaves. He, however, said there's a bigger issue here than saving the Union, and that is the Declaration of Independence. You cannot say all men are created equal and have slavery. You can't. So we could save the Union, but we would have lost
Right.
the unifying principle. So you're absolutely right. That was Lincoln, and of course, in Declaration of Independence of the people, that those men who died, he said, had given their last full measure of devotion, he said, so that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people would not perish from the earth. Now, for me, and the raison d'etre for my campaign is that it's perishing now. It's perishing on our watch. We are, for all intents and purposes, a government of the corporations, by the corporations, for the corporations. That is diametrically opposed to of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the government that has created and maintained that disconnection of government of the corporation, by the corporations, for the corporations, will not repair itself. They will not disrupt that. There's too much money to be made. There's too much power at stake, and they're not going to do it. And if it gets done, it's because we, the people, step in and intervene.
Another thing we often talk about in integral circles are, these stages of development, how human beings mature over time, both individually and collectively. And so much of the focus these days in the media is on the pathological sort of versions of some of particular stages, right? We really focus on sort of the pathologies and the unhealthy versions of traditionalism, for example, which we often see in like the MAGA movement. And then we also like to talk about the extremes of the green pluralistic postmodern side, which looks something like wokeism. So we have this sort of, these two options that are being presented to America. You can be woke or you can be MAGA. And they both really seem to represent sort of the dysfunctional stages that are really asserting themselves. So we have we talk about the amber traditional meme, then we have the orange rational modern meme, and then we have the green postmodern meme. And really what we seem to be seeing here is an orange corporate capitalist structure that is so unhealthy and sort of out of balance that is generating tension between amber excesses and green excesses in order to keep people distracted from the orange excesses. And which I think you are directly addressing in things like your Economic Bill of Rights.
The biggest pathological fact of all is hyper-capitalism, vulture capitalism, crony capitalism. And that actually manufactures for its own purposes the smaller forms of pathology. MAGA will come and go, wokeism will come and go. But hyper-capitalism, unfettered capitalism, a capitalism completely disconnected from any kind of ethical consideration, which is contrary not only to the Declaration of Independence, it's contrary even to the original articulation of capitalism by Adam Smith. Adam Smith said that free market capitalism cannot exist outside an ethical center. So this is an evil spawn, as it were, of any original capitalist invention. We can argue all day, well, is capitalism inherently exploitative? I don't think that's the deeper question. The deeper question for now is the form of capitalism, this unfettered greed machine, which is like a heat-seeking missile for anywhere where profit might be possible. And it actually sees human despair as the most fertile field of all for its malfeasance, because when people are desperate, they'll do anything to get the product. This is a corporate aristocracy at this point, and it is tyrannous. It is tyrannous no less than the landed gentry aristocracy of Old England was tyrannous. And in 1776, we said hell no to that. We threw the tea back in the water, and it's time to throw the tea back in the water again.
What do you see on the social justice front in terms of poverty, etc.?
Well, we have the highest poverty rate of any advanced democracy. It's outrageous. We have over 3 million evictions in this country every year, which is what it was at the height of the housing crisis. And that's why the Economic Bill of Rights is so important. An Economic Bill of Rights is what Franklin Roosevelt had come up with towards the end of the war and was ready to roll out after the war's completion. Of course, he never had a chance to do that. To me, the end of the inherent economic injustice at the core of how we operate today is the biggest blow to a socially unjust system, is to really strike a blow to the level of economic injustice. We are living now in the second Gilded Age. And the first Gilded Age was responded to with the establishment of the New Deal. We need a better deal. That's what we need. The American people need a better deal. Now people living with this level of just chronic tension and anxiety because they have to work more than one job and all of the lack of benefits and all that goes along with that. It comes from our economic policies and also from everything else you and I have talked about, has created a situation where a certain level of despair seems to be a feature of the American experience. Now, how does this jive with the fact that we're the richest country in the world?
Right.
Well, it's because our government, the people who are in control of our government for the most part, are not aligned with the notion that it is government's job to help people thrive. They'll just throw, oh, you're a communist, you're a socialist, which is exactly what they threw at Roosevelt. He didn't care that they called him names and that they vehemently opposed him. He said, I welcome their hatred. They are, he said, economic royalists. But the economic royalists today are headquartered in both political parties, much more in the Republican than the Democrat. But I'll tell you something, we're not them is no longer enough.
Right.
It's no longer enough. And not only is it no longer enough philosophically, I don't even think it'll be enough to win in 2024. I think that in order to win in 2024, we have to actually offer the American people a compelling vision, an alternative to the corporate tyranny that is now in our midst. And that stems from going back to the principles of the Declaration of Independence. Who is this government belong to? If the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people, then we are really on the wrong track. And we are on the wrong track, and that needs to be fixed right now. We need an economic U-turn in this country. We need universal health care. We need tuition-free college and tech school. We need free child care. We need a guaranteed living wage. We need a paid family leave. And we need guaranteed sick pay. Now, I have put these principles, plus a few more, in something called an economic bill of rights. Now, what Roosevelt did was that Roosevelt talked about the 4 freedoms. 2 of them were the freedoms of, that we know, freedom of religion, freedom of protest and assembly. But then he put freedom from want and freedom from fear. And that want and fear is really the emotional state that is causing so much of this opposition and this angry energy that is in the country today. So those are the policies. Those policies that I mentioned are all considered mainstream policy positions in every other advanced democracy. Now, some people say, well, how, would you make it happen? And they try to use that actually to minimize my campaign. The truth of the matter is, though, no matter who you are, you hope to have a House and Senate that goes along with you and wants to play ball. If you do, then you can go so much further. If you don't, however, then you have executive orders and you have the bully pulpit. I'm not saying that if/when I'm president that I can make all those things happen because I have a magic wand. The president doesn't have a magic wand. The president shouldn't have a magic wand. But I'll tell you something, people would have a visceral recognition that during my administration we began to turn this ship around. Because I would do what it takes. There's no reason for me to stand back because if I go too far, the insurance companies will be angry. There's no reason for me to stand back because if I go too far, defense contractors will be angry. I'm not of that system.
We are seeing this rapid and accelerating emergence of artificial intelligence. These new technologies that are clearly, and already are in many ways, tremendously disruptive, economically disruptive, socially disruptive, culturally disruptive, and so forth. What are you seeing as sort of the primary, not just challenges that are coming with AI, because I know there's a lot of them, but also the opportunities? How are you relating to AI, and do you think there's an important role in terms of government regulation of these technologies, how they emerge, and how they are implemented?
I think the opportunities afforded by AI to destroy the species far outweigh the opportunities created to help us in any particular area. In any particular area where they say, oh, AI could help us feed everybody. Oh, AI could help us handle climate change. BS. Let me tell you something. We could feed everybody right now. It is not a lack of AI that's keeping us from it. It's a lack of heart. It's a lack of conscience that's keeping us from feeding everybody. Same with solving the climate crisis. We don't need AI to solve the climate crisis. We need the political will to actually do what it takes to transition to a green energy grid. So this idea that it could help us so much, I am at this point, and it took me a while to get here, but I'm here now. I think that what we're doing with AI is kind of like the private sector developing nuclear power. This thing could kill us all. This thing could go rogue on a collective level. I mean, this is like Stanley Kubrick. This is like, HAL or something, but it's very real. So what we are going to need, when you say, is there room for regulation? You better believe there's room for regulation. In my opinion, ultimately, we're going to get to the point probably where they're going to be talking about non-proliferation, just like that we need to talk about non-proliferation of nuclear energy. We don't need more technological help. We need more heart. We need more compassion. We need more forgiveness. We need more love. We need more conscience. Technology disconnected from the human heart, I can't think of anything more dangerous.